Hi, everybody. This is Donna Reed, and I live in Tucson, Arizona. And most of you know I traveled in Up With People in 1976. And today my guest is David Grossman. And I met Dave in 76. I have no idea why or what you were doing at the time. So Dave, welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Donna. 76, was it the summer of 76?
Well, we staged in
Staging?
Tucson, but remind me, okay, in my head, I think you were from Ohio. Did I make that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
originally I'm originally from Rochester, New York, but
Were
in
you,
the summer of 76, Herbie hired me to come help staging.
okay, so maybe it was in staging. And then did you by any chance help at Blossom Center in Cleveland with the big show that they did in 75?
No,
Okay.
no.
Well, then see this is why I have to interview people, because in my brain I have all these memories that never occurred.
Did we have fun there?
Yeah,
Tell me about our time there.
sounds great. So, all right. So Dave, do you prefer Dave or David?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. The answer is David, but everybody in Up With People has always called me Dave. So I find it very comforting when I talk with folks and they call me Dave because I know they're from that part of my life. So please feel free to call me
Oh,
Dave.
that's
Because
super interesting. I have brothers, Dan and Ken, who were Danny and Kenny. And they're kind of the same way. They're like, oh, it's either you or somebody from elementary school.
so whenever it's Up With People, it's Dave, and the rest of my life has always been David. So we can go
That's
with
interesting. All right. So when did you first learn about Up With People, see a show? How did you get involved?
like so many other people, I saw an assembly that came to my high school in 1972, December of
Okay.
72. And I was not interested, didn't know anything about Up With People. I was on my way out of the high school at the time, and I saw the poster on the wall that said, come to an assembly to hear the music. And I was like, should I go home or should I go to this assembly? What the heck? I'll go to the assembly. And I still have that poster to this day because it was really what many people refer to as a sliding door moment. I could have gone home, but I didn't. I turned right and went to the assembly and met Joel McCall there. For
Mhm.
those of you that know Joel, and Joel interviewed me, and Steve Woods did the second intervy.
He was the
And
director of admissions at the time. Was he already?
you know what? I'm not sure what his title was,
Okay. Okay.
but
Maybe cast director back then. Even.
I know he did the second interview that day. I was only a junior in high school at the time.
Ah, okay.
And then my parents went and saw the show. They did another assembly that evening, and they had never heard of Up With People, so they went and saw the show. And 6 months later, I was in Newport Beach.
That's
Uh,
so, I've never heard it quite said, that sliding door moment. And I really like that because it's like the Robert Frost poem, right? Two roads diverged and you took a road. And
are you familiar with the movie Sliding Doors?
no,
That's with
no.
it's with Gwyneth Paltrow. It's really pretty wonderful. And at the beginning of the movie, she makes a split-second decision, and one thing happens, and then they reverse
Uh,
the film,
uh,
and then she makes a different split-second decision, and and the rest of the movie is the
Both
effect
paths.
of those decisions.
How fascinating, because we all have those little ones and big ones, right? And we don't have any idea
Not
what's
at the time.
what's going to happen. So were you involved in music in high school already? I mean, were you playing an instrument, and what were you doing in high school that maybe said, oh yeah, I should go do this thing with Up With People?
I was immersed in music from the age of 9. And fortunately, I lived in Rochester, which is where the Eastman School of Music is, and they had a
Right.
program for young kids. So I
Oh,
studied there for a number of years after school, and during high school, I was really involved in all things musical. And Joel actually heard me that afternoon practicing something. So when I came to the assembly and we talked afterwards, he said, I was hoping you'd come because I heard you earlier and we should talk about maybe your involvement in the organization. So yeah, I was really into music. And at first the show was I thought it was kind of saccharine. Um,
probably
you
was.
it really, and I
It was
kind of
the
was,
early 70s. I'm sure it felt sacred.
it was I don't know. But I enjoyed it enough to stick around and have that conversation, and I'm glad I did.
That's awesome. So I'm going to guess that Eastman School of Music, Eastman Kodak, is it also part of Eastman that's in Kingsport, Tennessee? Or is that, I
I
think
don't
there's a,
think so. It's part of the University of Rochester. It's named after George Eastman,
right,
who's from Rochester, where Kodak is.
right.
But the school of the University of Rochester was named after him, which is why it's the Eastman School of Music.
Okay, personal question. Nobody else will care, but which high school did you go to in Rochester?
In Rochester, West Irondequoit High School. Why? Why would you?
Because my uncle worked for Kodak his whole life, and all my cousins
Oh
graduated
my gosh!
in Rochester. And I am they live in the same house, Dave, that is like 1969 Tartarian Circle. I don't know why I remember that. But I'm trying, and the name of their high school is escaping me, and I thought, well, if you said it and it was the same one, I would recognize it.
There are a lot of them. I mean, there was West Irondequoit, East Irondequoit. There were, a sprinkling of some other
Yeah,
high schools, and that
yeah.
was it.
Anyway, just yeah, personal side of things. All right, so were you then in the middle of your senior year when you took off? Did you do like Up with People high school? Because you said you were a junior. Okay.
Yeah, I turned 17 in June of that year, and then July 1st was when we started staging.
Okay.
Um, and my high school was very progressive when I look back at it now, and they were like, look at, go do your year. Our only requirement is that when you get back, you do an English project.
Oh,
Excuse me, that documents the year.
okay.
That was it. So that's all.
Wow. Wow. That's very cool. Was Virginia Trevitt by any chance doing
Yeah.
education at that time? I think that in 76, we were kind of at the end of her time because the whole schooling piece had changed a little bit, for Up with
Or
People.
was Up with People still doing high school?
So Heidi Saul traveled with me, Don Saul's daughter, and she was 17. There were a couple that did some things, but I didn't. I had just graduated, so I don't remember the details about school. And I don't believe that Virginia was on the road with us the whole time. But once again, that could be different because 40 some years later, I'm
Yeah,
not
right. We can make this
100.
up as we go along, and people
Yeah,
are going
exactly. That's what people
to.
say. People say that at reunions, you're like, oh. All right. So you travel on the road. Did you come in as a musician? Were you participating in the band at that point, or?
Well, back then you just came in, and
Right.
while I came in, sure, I'll be the drummer. I got in and quickly found out that that was not the case, that I had to audition,
Oh,
and I also had to do a vocal audition, and I had to do a dance audition, and excuse me. And at one point I got a cold, and they were worried that I might not be well enough to be the drummer, so they gave the gig to another drummer, if you will,
yeah.
and I was beside myself because the only reason I really wanted to go to Up with People was to drum. So I remember, and Ralph does not remember this.
Okay.
God rest his soul.
That's awesome.
I went up to Ralph and I said, Ralph, why is another drummer sitting in my chair? All I had was a cold. And Ralph said to me, if the only reason you're in Up with People is to play drums, then go home right now. We don't care.
Ooh.
Whoa.
For Ralph, that was pretty bold because he's
He's like a mellow kind of guy. But he put me in my place. I probably had a bit of an attitude, and I really just kind of chilled and went, okay, let me kind of reevaluate what this is all about and why I am here and what the organization's about, and kind of take it a day at a time. And anyway, I ended up getting over that cold and ended up playing drums for
I
the.
have to tell you, it's funny to say for the memories because when did you watch the one with Arizona? Because Bob Huff talked about saying something that he apologized to Ralph for like 40 years later. And Ralph didn't even remember it. And I had said something to Paul that I had shocked Ralph and PJ and Lynn when I was doing costumes. And they all just looked at me because they didn't get my sarcasm at all. And Paul says, I'll bet you Ralph forgave you.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I bet he did. I bet he did.
You
All
know,
right.
when we're that young, those kind of moments are very impressionable, you know. I mean, I would never expect Ralph to remember that. He was just doing what he needed to do and said the
Right.
appropriate response. But to me, it was like, okay.
Yeah. And cause to pause and look at yourself and think, oh, is that why I'm here? Right?
Here we
Yeah.
are, 50 years later. I remember it like it was this morning. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a fair
So
story.
then did you, so then Herbie asked you to help. So that was 73 now, right? So 73, 74 that you would have, or was it seven? Okay.
73, 74. Then they
Okay.
asked me to come back for another year as a I don't know, band manager, whatever.
Okay.
So I did
Okay.
that for 74, 75.
Okay.
Then Herbie kept saying, David, you don't need to go to music college. I can teach you everything you need to know. Stay up with people. I'm like, Herb, I gotta go to music college. I gotta do this. So I went to Berkeley and we stayed in touch. We stayed in touch quite a bit over the course of that year. And then he invited me to come back to the next staging. And then I did all the stagings from 76 through 82,
Okay.
including the winter ones.
Okay. So maybe that's where I met you. Huh. I don't know.
And then after I got out of college, I went back on the road again as a show
Oh,
manager in 79, 80.
okay. Okay. So you had a lot of years coming and going. It's fascinating for me because I was a 1 year person and then did costumes for a couple of years. And because I was the bicentennial, we had to make up non-Americans. We had like 6 in our cast, right? So I really learned so much more throughout being on the board of governors and things like that. Than those of you that jumped on a bus or that worked a lot of years and stuff afterwards. So now you leave Up With People. And first of all, did you meet your spouse in Up With People?
No, but in that 73 year, I met the woman who 9 years later would introduce me to my spouse.
Oh, so see, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it was Marty Elkin. Do you know Marty?
I know the name, but don't know.
She traveled that year and then she moved to LA. And when I moved to LA, we connected and she knew my wife at that point. And
Okay.
both of us to a party at her house. And that was
That's fun. Interesting to see the roads again.
if I had made that one turn in high school and gone home instead of into the auditorium, I wouldn't have been celebrating 40 years with this wonderful woman.
I know, that's just awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so Up With People is over at this point. Do you know what you want to do with your life?
Well, it depends which year you're talking about. Up With People is over.
I'm gonna say at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, something like that.
Okay, so after I graduated music college, went on the road, was a show manager, and as long as I could be, at which point I said it's time for me to start a different career than what Up With People was offering. So it was time to leave the road and either pick LA or New York as a musician, because my goal was to be a studio drummer.
Okay.
And having grown up in the East, I didn't want to be there. And having spent some time in Los Angeles, I was in love with it and the weather and all that California's about. And so
compared to Rochester, yeah.
Compared to Rochester. So I got in my car, everything I owned, in my little clunky wagon, and drove out to LA.
Wow. I hear about people doing that.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. I didn't think much about it. I had a friend in LA that was a composer that I had met in Berkeley. And he was like, yeah, come to LA, if I get work, I'll give it to you. And if you get work, you can give it to me. And
wow.
Yeah, just that stage in your life, you're like, okay, I'll try that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. My youngest son, who traveled in 2013, his degrees are in theater and script writing, but he lives in Denver. I call it the retirement home for the younger Up With People alumni. And they're in their 30s. But there have been actors and stuff who have said to him, you either make the decision to go to New York or LA, or you don't. And if you're content in Denver and doing what you're doing, and you may or may not get a part in a movie, or you may or may not, that's fine. But I can help you with an agent here or there, or you choose Denver. It's kind of fascinating. So you saying that is just,
Yeah, I think those lines have blurred a lot over the years.
because of technology and the way people interview and stuff, or
I think technology has a lot to do with it. Um, I'm I've just finished a book on how to have a career in music, basically geared towards the 17 to 22 year olds.
okay,
And I talk a lot about, whether it's still critical for you to go to one of those centers, Nashville or New York or LA, or whether you can find long-term success and happiness by working your craft in a different location that may be more suitable for who you are and your DNA.
right, right. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a different world than it was when we were younger. That's for sure.
Back then, it was definitely just LA or New York, and
Right.
maybe Nashville, but at that point, it was
Mm, yeah.
more traditional country. It wasn't contemporary to the degree it is now, and so Los
Yeah.
Angeles is
And
definitely.
now I'm like, there's Austin, there's Nashville, there's, yeah,
Oh yeah.
they're kind of all over the place. Okay, so I know, and I'm putting that in quotes because I only know because of the grapevine that you were involved with the Grammys. Tell me what you did or how you worked with the Grammy Association, or if I made that all up too.
No, you didn't make that up, but that's really towards the tail end of my professional career.
Okay, so what's
So
in the middle?
I'm not sure if you want me to start. I can start there, or I can be
No, work through it.
chronological.
Yeah.
But I will make this fairly short, and then you can dive into wherever you want to dive into. Um, so I got to LA. I spent 6 years playing professionally as a drummer. Then I transitioned into what's called music supervision. And through a series of fortunate events, ended up working at Columbia Pictures Television as their in-house music supervisor. Uh,
Ah,
and over a few years, worked my way up that corporate ladder, if you will, before I transitioned to Paramount Pictures, where I became their head of music for almost 18 years. So I oversaw all the music components that go into producing television shows for Paramount Pictures in Columbia, um, until such time that came to a natural conclusion, and I was hired as executive vice president for the Grammy organization, which is called the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. So I went there for 5 years to work in the management corporate side of that company, which has about, well, at the time it had about 200 people working full time throughout the year. Majority of it not being on the Grammys themselves, because
okay,
we're hiring an independent production company to actually produce the Grammys. But
right.
most people just think of the organization for the Grammy Awards, but it actually has considerable legs in other areas of the music industry. And I did that until we were empty nesters, and job opened up in Santa Barbara, California to run the symphony. So
Ah,
I'm in Santa Barbara, and I ran the symphony for 4 years, and then retired.
good. So are you in Santa Barbara now? Is that where you're at?
Santa Barbara for
Neat.
12 years.
Oh, that's neat. I have to introduce you to Mia. Mia has been one of the producers for the Alanis Morissette story, Jagged Little Pill, and is very involved in the Grammy Association and all of that. And her story, if you haven't watched it, I'll give you some private background. She's one of the people that I interviewed. It's always kind of fascinating for me, the trajectory that takes people where they go, you
Yeah.
know, and what they do. And so when you worked for Columbia Pictures, again, this goes back, were they still affiliated with Arista Records?
Well, where there's Columbia, at that point there was Columbia Records and Columbia Pictures Television. So they
Oh,
were
okay.
two completely separate companies.
Okay.
The motion picture and television company, which was on the Warner Brothers lot.
Right.
Uh, and then there was the record company, which was not associated with them.
Okay. Okay. The summer of 77, after my Up With People year, I worked at a dude ranch in Jackson Hole. And there were some family reunions there. And one of them was the guy was the head of Warner Brothers at the time. His brother was the head of Columbia Music. His sister was a potter in Oklahoma. And I remember that it was at the end of the season. And when I got back to Ohio, they had sent us thank you gifts. And I had gotten all these albums, Grateful Dead, all these, which are still in my closet, and stuff, the albums that you give. But when I think about that time, and
You have a turntable?
pardon, I don't have a turntable, and I should get one, because everybody says that the sound from albums is still as good or better than.
I don't have one either, but that is what they say.
Yeah. I know that at Northern Arizona University, there is a show where the kids that are running it are only using albums to play the music. They're, for the sound quality, which is.
Have you looked at the price of albums? New albums? It's mind-boggling. $30, $49.50, $70, $95. It's like, wow. I mean, when I started buying albums, well,
Really?
they were not very expensive.
No. I went through some stuff the other day, and I found a record, a 45, that was on the back of a cereal box, like this flimsy
right?
Finally stuff that you could play, right? It's just.
Let me show you this. Hold on one second.
Okay, yeah.
Check this out. This is what I had growing up.
Oh my gosh, that just gave me chills, because mine was probably in a little white thing that I opened up, David. Oh gosh, it's so funny. It's hard to believe that I'm at an age where we're doing those flashbacks. Because somewhere inside there's still a 20-year-old, right?
I know. I get it. But that's another conversation.
That's another conversation. Okay, so from an Up With People perspective, are there any songs through the years that really have spoken to you? And I should caution you that a lot of people say Roads, and a lot of people say, well, the same ones, a Moonrider. So if there's something that's not Roads or Moonrider, that'd be awesome.
Further we reach out.
Oh, that's one that a lot of people don't know. The younger people.
Further we reach out, the closer we become. Is I believe Frank wrote it. Frank Fields.
Frank Fields. Yeah. I think he's in Tucson. I think he lives here.
Yes, I saw him a couple months ago, actually.
Oh, nice.
And it's funny. Not only did the lyrics speak to me, but I remember when I would drum it, there was an emotion behind it.
Really?
That really resonated with me. That it just felt right in my bones as I played it. It's hard to explain, but even when I say the title of the song, I can just feel myself laying into it, and I don't know. It just kind of felt really important.
I would say that potentially that decision of the staying and not staying just for drumming is something that you may or may not have learned on the road. And this further we reach out, the closer we become, is evidence of that based on the life that has happened. Yeah. Any place that you traveled that you really want to go back to? You told me beforehand that you were just in Ireland, but any place you would love to go back to or haven't been that would be on your bucket list?
No place that I went to Up With People that I'm burning to get back to. I mean, I have really fond memories of Belgium and Spain, but it's about the people you meet, right? It's those
absolutely
it's those experiences you had with other human beings that kind of generates this magical memory to that location geographically. So I had such fabulous host families in those two countries that I'd like to go back to those two countries at some point and experience the people, this many years later. I mean, personally, we'd like to go to Australia. We've never been there. A lot of folks are talking about Iceland. A lot of our friends have been going there. I don't know, that seems to be a very popular destination from Santa
It
Barbara.
is. They've done a great marketing job.
Oh, that's probably on our bucket list. And how about you?
So I have a pen pal, David, that I had in high school, and I met her last year. She's from South India.
Wow.
I've never craved going to India, and I have no desire for like Mumbai or Bombay, but she lives in the hills in southern India. And I'm like, again, I probably wouldn't do it on my own, but to go stay with someone and have a local person show me around, which is our host family experience, our people experience.
Right.
I'm kind of looking at that, as something to do.
I've been to India, and I think the way that you want to go there is the right way to do it. It's with somebody that knows the culture and can share the non-touristy parts of the country with you. I was there on business, so I only saw that side of it.
She's like, you can ride an elephant. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want to ride an elephant. But okay, yeah. Anything that you ate on the road you would never eat again?
That's not on your list of questions.
Well, I've had some wonderful answers to this, and then or anything you tasted for the first time that you absolutely love. That's a long way back, I know.
No, but this is kind of just an offshoot of that. I'm not a big fish eater. At least I wasn't a fish eater at all back then.
Yeah.
But a host family one morning decided to put a fish in front of me.
Like the whole fish.
A whole fish. That was their delicacy. And they were quite excited and proud. It was one of those up with people moments that you just don't forget, where you're like, okay, I got to do the right thing here and eat the freaking fish. So maybe that's why I didn't have much of a taste for fish as I got older. But I did reacquire it, and it's just memory. No, I don't have a specific food per se.
As a Rochester guy, and like me as an Ohio, we were very much meat and potatoes. Like that was definitely life. And I think fish were fish sticks when I was little. I don't even remember. We did get some lake perch from Lake Erie. I remember that. We had some good perch, but nothing like we have the availability of now. And you being in a major city where you can get anything, right? You can have anything.
Just the fact that it's called a fish stick, they're not even going to tell you what kind of fish it is. It's like calling I'll have a meat stick, You wouldn't just eat a meat stick.
Parts breaded. That's so true. That's so true. What about the new program has launched? I don't know if you watched either of the shows that they've done. They did one in Mexico, and it's different, and there's been all sorts of good, bad. Otherwise, the marketing has been great. With People is doing a really good job of having young people promote the new stuff. But if you were to talk to an 18 to 25-year-old who's looking at a gap year or a gap quarter, as the case may be, because it's not necessarily a year like we did, what might you say to them about this experience that you had that you believe still relates 50 years later?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because a lot of people are being very critical about what Up With People is morphing into, and how it's trying to not revive, really. What's a good word?
Rebrand. It's got to be changed. Yeah.
Rebrand and try and find something relevant without just closing its doors. And I give it a lot of credit for that. But you're right. Fundamentally, the experience as to what it gives a young person is going to be fundamentally the same, right? It's going to be expanding your awareness of the world around you, learning how to communicate, how to develop relationships, how to deal with challenges, how to, stay flexible. All those things we learned in our year at a basic level aren't going to change. But you don't really know until you've experienced it,
right?
How much you're going to get out of it. I don't think any of us thought that it would have as much of an indelible mark, it would leave as much of an indelible mark on our lives as it has. We just did it.
Yeah.
And then we have an opportunity now, we're fortunate enough to look back and go, wow, that was life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe a new student can hear that and go, okay, yeah, I don't get it. I don't quite know what it's going to do for me. And I'm pretty content with where I am and what I'm doing, but I'll take a shot at it. But a year
Yeah.
later or 6 months or however long the program is, I'm sure they'll look back at it and be pleased that they were a part of something that special.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
interesting that the music isn't playing the same role that it did.
No, that is true. That is something that they're working on, and the way that, but I think part of it is the cost of traveling with a band, the cost of doing all that. It's a smaller group. And I believe that that's going to continue to evolve. That's my opinion, but I don't know that for sure, you know? So, yeah, because when we, to us, a lot of us, the music became the memories. I actually have done a speech a couple of times here in town and taken lyrics from songs through the years and equated them to living life, just as you said. there's a lot of good lyrics. There's some silly ones through the years, but there's a lot of good words that mainstream America has never heard, right? That they will never know.
There was a point in my career when I had a lot more, where my connections were, a lot more viable, that I tried to promote a lot of the Up With People stuff, because I thought it really needed to live outside of the ecosystem of Up With People. But
yeah,
didn't quite take the way I had hoped it would.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I am going to wrap this up. I want you to know I will probably share it fairly soon. Do you do Facebook at all? Are you okay?
I'm not that active on it, but I do check in periodically.
Great. So I will check and see if we are friends on Facebook. And if not, I'll send you a request so that when I share it, I can tag you and you can share it with your friends. Predominantly, we are still alumni that watch us.
Would imagine that's true.
That want to hear the stories. And I will say that the older we are, the more people that watch. the kids are all busy raising kids, and doing that. But thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Before we go, you do have children.
I do. Yeah. I have 3 boys. They are 42, 39, and 36. My 36-year-old is the one that traveled, and he's getting married in November in Denver. And there's 5 or 6 alumni coming from around the world.
Oh, that's wonderful, Donna.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, I don't know how many kids you have.
I have 2 daughters.
Okay.
I have a 30-year-old and a 37-year-old. And my 37-year-old lives in Puerto Rico, and she has 4 kids.
Ooh, wow.
6, 4, and 2 twins, 2-year-olds.
My
a set of twins that are 2-year-old.
Yeah, she has her hands full.
Whew. Oh yeah. Anyway,
I watched a baby the other day for about an hour, and I was like, "How do people do this?"
Seriously, there's a reason it's young people that have kids.
That has kids. There were certain things in life that made sense. Yeah, yeah. All right, I'm going to log off. I'll talk to you for one more minute, but thank you so much, Dave.
Donna, good luck to you. Take care.